Herbert. Kate, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen while I read your introduction, and we can keep things moving. Kate, you are the last session for the day, so feel free to take all the time that you need. I don't really have that many closing remarks, I will say that. All right. Kate is sharing. All right, so our last presentation of the day is Kate Herbert from the Maine State Archives, who's presenting A Matter of Scale. This presentation will give the Maine State Archives perspective on working in ArchivesSpace when your institution has very large collections, how this changes some uses of the platform, and its effects on workflow and data entry. This is a case study of the roadblocks Maine State Archives has come up against and how we have overcome them, and a conversation with others with very large resources to share issues and solutions. Take it away, Kate.
Okay. So my name is Kate Herbert. I'm the digital archivist at the Maine State Archives. And at first, some background. So to define some terms, as I said, we have a very large collection, but we sort of have a oddly structured collection as well. So we only have 31 resource records, but we have over 200,000 archival objects, almost 60,000 top containers, one accession record, and 37,000 plus digital objects. And as I said, I am the digital archivist, and for up until, well, it will be May now, I have been the only digital archive staff. We are hiring a second person, and I said they'll start in May. And to give
Kate?
Yep.
Can I just so you know, you do have a presenter view up on your screen.
Oh.
If that's intentional, that's fine. But I just wanted to make sure in case you had some notes on your other slides you didn't want us to see. Yeah.
Is that better?
Perfect. That's good. Yeah. We're good now.
For some perspective, the paper side of the collection is over 44,000 linear feet. So a big collection. So sort of a brief history of ArchivesSpace for us. We started using ArchivesSpace in 2015, entering items really slowly. We were vetting everything, cleaning up the data. So that by 2018, we only had about a little less than 10% of our containers entered. That is also the year I started as digital archivist. So before that, we had no sort of dedicated digital staff. So in 2020, we had to move our entire paper collection because we had a catastrophic failure of the HVAC system in our building. And so that sort of lit a fire, and we ended up adding the rest of our collection very quickly to ArchivesSpace so that we could track the move. Also, as part of that, in 2021, we launched the ArchivesSpace PUI so that because of the move, we were now in a place where we could only serve by appointment only. And so this allowed our patrons to actually search our catalog and made things much more efficient. So we have been sort of living in our temporary space. And then we had two major additions that are happening sort of within the next couple of months, which is we get our another position and we launch our digital preservation system. And that will obviously compound the issues that I'm talking about, because with that will come a lot more records. And then now penciled in as January 2025, we will move our collection back. So we have another very large move in front of us. So as I said, the majority of this, I'm going to sort of go through some of the problems that we have come across because our collection is so large, and some of those solutions. And I hope we'll have enough time for a good discussion afterwards. So first problem being that both our archival objects and top containers exceed the 50,000 record limit for custom report templates. As I said before, we have, hundreds of thousands of archival objects, and with top containers, I think we're over 60,000 now. So the solution we've done, and as many of the presenters have been talking about, we are using the API to run the reports because it allows us to get all of the data we need. I sort of modified some existing scripts and sort of simplified them for our use as reports, so there's not much you have to change, so that I can run the reports for all kinds of different endpoints. So top containers, digital objects, but also agents, container profiles, and such. So I do this using Jupyter Notebook. I'll run the report. It will create a JSON file. And then I use OpenRefine to make it look more like a report, so other members of our team can use the report data depending on our needs. This is very much how we managed our move, and it enabled us to track our top containers. And at the moment, all of our containers have two locations: their original location, which is tied to our old records management database, and then the current location in our temporary storage. So it allowed us to manage all of that at scale. Okay, another problem. Some of the finding aids that we generate through the normal process in ArchivesSpace are over 1,000 pages long, which obviously isn't too useful for most people. It's useful for printing maybe sections or for us to have one copy in our reading room, but not so much if people want to be able to have their own copy, or for us to be able to regularly print people a copy. So the solution for this one, again, we ran a modified XLT against the EAD export. This also made things a little bit quicker, as the EAD export tends to be a little bit quicker than running the PDF. And it also allowed us to simplify it a lot by removing most of the notes, limiting the dates to only the year or the year range, and just modifying some columns so that it was much more simplified. And we did also add the note on the cover page stating that this was just for basic reference, and giving the link to the ArchivesSpace install PUI so that people would know that there's a more searchable thing. But if we still have a lot of patrons who prefer paper, so that they can have something to refer back to. So our next problem, similar to the last presenter, was the integration of our digital preservation system and with our ArchivesSpace install. We wanted to make sure that the ArchivesSpace install would always be sort of the application of record for all of our metadata. And we are not using Preservica, we're actually using libnova. So they are sort of in the box ArchivesSpace install assumes that you can make a whole map of your repository whenever you need to sync data. And obviously, for many reasons, that won't work with us, because I haven't had a chance to test it against our production ArchivesSpace, but it would take hours, if not days. So our solution, and this one is not pretty, but it does work, is to use the API or EAD export to get the ref IDs or the URIs to be able to manually add them to the ingestion spreadsheet. I'm hoping this is a new solution. I'm hoping that over time we'll be able to refine this. And then we had to have them disable the integration feature that automatically would run the whole database. But at this point, this is where we are. So this is one of the solutions that is not as pretty or simple as I would like. It added a lot of steps to our workflow, but it does work. And probably my least favorite problem is that the EAD exports just stop after the file reaches a certain size. This one's my least favorite, mostly because we don't have a solution yet. There's an open ticket for this one. Several more organizations and archivists have added information to this. And so hopefully at some point, we will be able to fully get this issue resolved. Sort of as a stopgap, we've been able to break out some of this largest series and put them into their own resource so that it makes each resource smaller. But for example, one of our series that we had to break out is all of the original paperwork for all of the laws ever signed in Maine, which is about, I think it's a little over 2,000 boxes. And we have it down to the folder level because each folder is a law. And it doesn't like that much data in one resource to create the EAD. It will just stop, which you get a semi-valid file out of that, but because it doesn't have the end tags, it won't let you do anything with it. So as I said, that's sort of my quick overview of some of the problems and solutions we've been working on. So just sort of as a quick takeaway, patience is required for all of this because of the size of the database. Everything takes longer. One good example I have of this is we have implemented the local context project, which allows us to put markers on any material that may contain indigenous information. But it had the plugin then will index anything below where you put the marker because it inherits it. And it took 3 days to run and index everything below where we had placed those markers. I was in a panic. I didn't think it had worked for some reason. I thought it was a bug, and it was just the fact that our collection was so large that it took several days to index. Thinking outside of the box, sometimes obviously you have to go outside of ArchivesSpace, as a lot of the presenters have mentioned. Sometimes working with those large data sets, it involves something like I use Open Refine to be able just to manage sometimes the doing things into CSV or Excel that is just too big. It will either not open the file or it will crash or be very slow. So thinking outside the box, thinking of other tools you may be able to use just to get the data how you want it so that it's usable, especially for the non-tech savvy members of your organization, and then asking for help. So obviously with the ticket, we had a lot of help from Lyrasis, who hosts our install. I've also asked several questions out on the listserv, which is great, and you get good answers. And sometimes it's just nice to have other people who work maybe for your institution, maybe not, and be able to talk to them to see if they have similar problems. So that's a quick overview for me. But really a good part of this is I wanted to talk and see if anyone else is having similar issues and or other issues that are based on sort of the size of the collection, and see and go from there. And this is my contact information in case anyone wants to reach out later.
All right. Thank you, Kate. There were several times where you 1,000-page finding aids, or then the mention of a series that is all of the paperwork for all of the laws ever signed in Maine. That is That is a lot. You did not undersell it in your description, that's for sure. So we're going to go ahead and move to the Q&A. So if you have a question for Kate, please do pop it into the Q&A. We did get a question about these Q&As and if they would be made available with the recording, and we will make sure that each Q&A for every session is included on the wiki. So make sure you keep an eye out on the for those resources in the coming weeks. So one question we have for Kate in the Q&A. Thank you for your presentation. Do you anticipate a future project to break up the collection into more resource records to make things less unwieldy?
I would say potentially, when we had to do the first one with the laws, that became sort of, we talked about sort of the viability of that. Sort of our issue is that ours are structured as record groups, which each represent a department in the state. And so it is harder to break those up without losing the hierarchy that also exists, not just in archival records, but sort of in how we think about our records. Fortunately for the laws, that was a pretty easy one to separate out because that's meaningful sort of without its hierarchy. And there's been another one which was a now defunct sort of function of our executive department called the Executive Council, that we've had to separate out because it's gotten too large. But if it's something like air quality records, it sort of loses context if we break it out from its hierarchy. So there might be a few others, but our goal is not to have to do that, because it's not ideal.
Yep. Thanks. Wow, the scale is just massive. Yeah, so if you have any more questions for Kate, please do drop them into the chat. And I'll mention that the ticket that Kate referenced, if anyone's interested in contributing comment on that, it's still available. You can definitely include your use cases, and that will be included as part of the resources on the wiki as well. All right. No other questions are popping up into the chat. I'm going to speak very slowly to give it any last minute opportunities. But barring none, I will say thank you so much, Kate. That was really interesting and overwhelming to hear about. So thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you everyone for being here. Not seeing any other questions popping up in the chat. And this is our last presentation for the day. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the first day of the Virtual Member Forum. Thank you everyone for being here. And don't forget, we have another day of presentations tomorrow. If you're interested in attending those, registration is still open. Feel free to sign up at any time and we will send you connection information for that. Otherwise, I will talk to you all tomorrow and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, everyone.